Arizona's most haunted hotel. The dark history lurking inside the Jerome Grand Hotel. Sitting on a hillside above the mountain town of Jerome, sits the Jerome Grand Hotel. This historic hotel was once a state-of-the-art hospital, and it was once regarded as the most modern medical facilities in the West. The building was first constructed in 1927, then called the United Verde Hospital, and was built to accommodate the growing population of miners. In 1996 the hospital reopened as the Jerome Grand Hotel. The hotel sits at about 5,200 feet above sea level, offering fantastic views of the Verde Valley. But the views aren't the only attraction. Paranormal investigators flock to the Jerome Grand Hotel to see if the hotel is really haunted. Ghosts, spirits, and even a poltergeist are said to haunt this hotel. Eerie breathing, wheezing, and voices coming from supposedly empty rooms, and many more strange and unexplainable things have happened in this creepy building. Paranormal experts are said to have uncovered the ghosts of doctors, employees, patients, and even reports of a ghostly cat are said to haunt this old hotel. Room 32 is said to be the source of many of the paranormal encounters people have had whilst visiting the hotel. This room has also had 2 people committed suicide in this room. Room 32 is a former hospital's guest room with a balcony. A miner, who was unfortunately confined to a wheelchair because of an accident, reportedly climbed the balcony and fell to his death. And a businessman has also committed suicide in this room by shooting himself in the head. Many of the ghosts and spirits are said to be from the hotel's hospital days. Patients who passed away still inhabit their hospital wards. A male doctor carrying a clipboard, a female nurse, and a female patient in a gown have been seen wandering together around the halls. While the Jerome Grand Hotel was still abandoned, 2 separate psychics caught onto a ghost who claimed to be the head nurse, or nurse in charge, who seemed to hang out in what is now the restaurant and lounge area of the hotel. This area was originally the dispensary and main entrance of the hospital. Since opening as a hotel, numerous guests have reported the ghosts of children in the hallways and hotel rooms. They've heard giggling, laughing, and even crying coming from empty rooms. On one occasion, a guest heard a baby crying, loud enough to force them to call the front desk. When hotel security checked, the room was vacant. The ghost of one boy, in particular, seems to be the most common. He is said to be between 4 and 6 years old, and people often see him running up and down the hallways, either laughing or crying in the middle of the night. He's also been seen in the hotel rooms while guests are asleep, staring at the guests while standing at the foot of the bed. The ghost of Claude Harvey, a hospital maintenance worker, is said to still haunt the building. Claude died in 1935 under very mysterious circumstances. His body was found under the Otis elevator. But Claude Harvey was presumably murdered, though there isn't any evidence to support that claim. The elevator was inspected and was said not to be the cause of his death. No autopsy or X-ray was taken, as the United Verde Copper Company didn't want to be held liable, nor did they want the controversy. Many say he was murdered, and his body was placed under the elevator to make it look like an accident or even suicide. Staff working the graveyard shift often see Claude Harvey's ghost near the boiler room, usually walking up the stairs and sometimes roaming around as if still working. He appears as a light shadow against the walls. His shadows have been seen in the laundry room, where staff have also heard him coughing and mumbling to himself. Not every ghost at the Jerome Grand is human. A spirit cat also lives in the building. Guests and staff have felt the cat brush up on their legs, and others hear it purring, meowing, and scratching at doors and walls. Guests have encountered the feeling of a cat snuggling up to them, whilst in bed, sometimes even leaving a ghostly imprint. In 2008, a guest staying in room 20 captured a clear image of the cat, sitting on a table looking at the photographer. The photo is kept at the front desk, among photos of other ghosts. In addition to ghosts, guests and staff have reported strange experiences, such as lights and TVs switching on and off on their own. TVs, table lamps, and other electrical items are also known to unplug on their own. Unknown cell phones and camcorders have been found dead under the beds. Assortments of items have gone flying across rooms with no known cause or explanation. As for the poltergeist, some people believe that it roams the hotel haunting a different room every night, whilst one paranormal investigator believes that it's the cause of the many strange things that have happened in room 32. A few years after the hotel opened, and reports of the paranormal began to emerge, a local paranormal buff named Cliff booked himself into the hotel, and he demanded he stay in room 32. Armed with a camera, Cliff checked into the hotel. He arrived at his room, expecting to open his door and be greeted by at least a strange atmosphere. But there was nothing. The room seemed quiet, peaceful, in fact it seemed quite inviting. Cliff went and had a look around the large hotel and grabbed some food, before heading back to his room. Upon entering his room, he plugged his camera into the power socket on the wall to ensure that it was fully charged. He then sat down on the bed, and that's when things took a very strange turn. Well, that's when Cliff then had a very strange experience. He began to feel like the room was spinning, kind of like when you have too much to drink, only Cliff hadn't been drinking. The walls then began to move in waves, like water. Cliff tried to move, but he didn't have much control over his body. He really did feel like he was intoxicated. Cliff looked around the bed for his mobile phone, but he couldn't see it. So he tried to get up of the bed to find it. As soon as he stood up, it was like the floor moved from under him, and he fell for the ground. He then noticed his camera on the floor next to the plug. He then seen it wasn't plugged in. Even though he was sure it was the first thing he did. Capturing something on the camera was the only reason for his stay at the hotel, so he was sure that he had plugged it in. The room still spinning, and the walls still moving like waves. Cliff tried to plug his camera back into the wall socket, but the wall was moving too much. Cliff then began to hear a whispering voice in his ear. The voice was telling him, "Nobody will miss you, Cliff. Nobody really likes you." Cliff realized he needed to get out of the room. He began to try and crawl towards the door, but when he looked at the walls, they were spinning. The door seemed to be spinning around him, like a fairground ride. Suddenly the lights went out, and Cliff was now dizzy on the floor. Unsure of whether the room was still spinning around him or not, he fumbled around on the floor, until he felt the leg of a chair. He reached his arms up and felt the dresser. He moved his hands over the dresser, until he found the phone. He frantically pressed buttons and a voice on the other end said hello. It was the front desk. Cliff shouted, "Help! I need help. I'm in room 32, come right now." A few moments later there was a knock at the door. Cliff shouted, "Help me please." The door opened, and the light came on. Cliff looked up to see a hotel worker with a puzzled look on his face, stood in the doorway. The room was now completely still again. Cliff looked around, to find the room in complete disarray. He stood up, no longer feeling dizzy, and he ran past the hotel worker, out into the hallway, and insisted that he wasn't going back inside the room. He made the man pack his belongings, and Cliff left the hotel. Cliff believes that it was the poltergeist responsible for his horrific experience, and believed it's possible that's also what causes the two men to commit suicide in that room. He thinks it's possible that they were so scared and unable to leave the room, that they did what they had to escape the terror. Thanks for watching Scary Ghost Stories.